Okay, so today is all about email, right? We didn't squeeze it in last week, so we've just moved it into the first lesson this week. So in week 12, and we're going to cover both of these today, step 21 and 22. So basically what we're doing, okay, the identity system, believe it or not, already has a defined interface for an email service. So all we need to go in and actually configure an email service to satisfy the requirements, the identity system. And bing, that's all we have to do. And then right away you have the ability to, reset forgot passwords, or even do that business of confirming the email address when you first register at the site and so on. Now, of course, we'll get away from registering online. We'll actually probably eventually switch our system so only new users are created internally, because they're mostly going to be employees or volunteers that work at the company, organization, whatever. But we'll want to be able to allow people to reset emails and do things like that. Then the next part we're going to get to is actually sending email as part of our business process as well, not just for the login system. But we'll start here. All right. So I'm going to begin our discussion with this little PowerPoint that I have ready to go. Just a short one, but it kind of runs through some of the basics we should talk about. Okay, so sending email from our .NET applications, any type of project, we can use the same techniques we're going to talk about today. Now, just a bit of a history lesson here, right? For quite a long time, what we had was a built-in mail service, all defined and ready to go as part of .NET, right? System.net.mail. I'm mainly mentioning it because, well, I'll explain more in a moment, right? Readily available, easy to use, bada bing, bada boom, right? But then they came out with .NET Core as opposed to .NET Framework. Ooh, and it was gone, okay? They said, sorry, we just, we're running behind schedule here. We just got the basics of .NET Core ready to go, and we don't have all the features. There's not feature parity with the actual full .NET Framework yet. So right up till version 1 point anything, okay, in .NET Core, it was not available. Nothing, right? Then, yay! And when they brought out .NET Core 2.0, it came back, right? So you could once again use system.net.mail, and you were all good until then it was deprecated, right? So actually, if you click this link, you can go and read all about it. And, it's important. We don't recommend using the SMTP client class from system.net and so on and so forth, right? And basically it goes on and explains, really use MailKit, right? Or other libraries instead, okay? And, more information available, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to point out that, okay, it was here, it was gone, it came back, and now they're telling us not to use it. So instead, what are we going to use? Well, the suggestion right there in the Microsoft documentation was to use MailKit. Now, MailKit is built on top of MimeKit, right? So you can use that. It works across all .NET standards. So it works in older or things based on .NET Framework still. Works in our new latest and greatest applications and so on. Now it's a basic implementation. Now MailKit sits on top of MimeKit, and it just gives you more and more capability. So I usually just go right to MailKit. I don't try to be too cheap and skip it altogether. That's what I'll go for. Just to mention, there are a few others. A popular one is Fluent Email, okay? It's a little bit limited, though, in comparison. So it's entirely up to you. You can research them more and make your own choice, but I'm usually just going to follow the recommended one and stick with MailKit because it just works. There we go. Okay. Now, let's just talk about email in general. You might have heard of this. You're probably already very well aware that two kinds of servers involved. SMTP servers, Simple Mail Transport Protocol. I can't quite remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. Something like that. Who really knows these acronyms, what they mean? Anyway, I think it's simple or small. No, I think it's simple. The Mail Transfer Protocol, I'm pretty sure I have right. Anyway, that is the kind of server that actually sends email, right? Oh, I think somebody answered my question. Let me just come back here. Can't read my comments. Yeah, it is simple. All right, very good. Okay, so there's lots of SMTP servers available to us. Oh, by the way, POP server is the other one. That's what you use to receive email, right? Two separate servers. There you go. Well, we want to send email. That's our concern right now. So where are we going to get an access to an SMTP server? Well, your internet provider, might have one that you can use, obviously, right? There's all the ones out there, your Outlook, your Gmail. Does anybody here actually use Yahoo Mail? I'd be very surprised. Anyway, there's lots out there. There are commercial services as well, right? That if you want to go out and just pay a little bit. SendGrid is a very, very powerful and popular one, and it's the default in Azure. So if you're hosting your web application in Azure, if you want to use a more powerful SMTP server rather than relying on something that's free, you can use SendGrid. Mailgun is another very popular one, and you can integrate that into your Azure. Obviously, you can integrate anything you want into your Azure solution, right? I think, Yahoo's still out there. It's still supported, and some people are using it. Anyway, all right, so no matter which SMTP server you end up using, okay, at a minimum, you need 4 things. You got to have the server address. You have to have the port number for the SMTP service on the server. And you need, at the minimum, a username and password, right? Now, that's basically the 4 things you need. I'm skipping over. I'm not going to take time to look at code and come back, right? I'm going to just assume that we're probably going to use MailKit because that works across all .NET applications, and away we go, right? So I kind of talk about there's the easy way and a better way. And, this is kind of referring to the code samples you'll find out there. Truth is, once you've got it installed and up and running, which is just a NuGet package, right? Install package, away you go. Then just anywhere in your code, if you want, you can just write a few lines of code, generate an email, and send it off, right? Now, of course, the better approach in most circumstances is to create a bit of an abstraction layer. So create an email service, right? Define that. And then that way, later on, if you want to switch your email configuration so you're using a different SMTP server or a different account or whatever, you can just change that easily, and you don't have to worry about swapping out different tools and packages and so on, right? So it's a kind of a better way to program. But just to look at how quick and easy it would be, right? Add a few usings at the top of your class using mailkit.net.smtp and so on and so forth, right? You can just define a new MIME message, okay? Create a mailbox address with a sender name and an email. You need a to address, of course, at least one of them, okay? A subject and a body, and basically then you just use the SMTP client to go through a few steps, connect to it, authenticate, send the message, and disconnect when you're done, right? And the rest of it is just kind of standard boilerplate stuff that we put in there for SSL certificates and things like that. So it's pretty straightforward, just to go ahead and do it directly. However, a little bit of extra work to actually get a proper email service set up within your application pays off in the long run. So I have a link here to an article that I've enjoyed referring to in the past. You can come here and read through it, and it's just in this site here, .NET Core Tutorials, right? Go through the whole thing, and by all means, you'll learn an awful lot of stuff. I took code from here. I relied on this to help me put together the code example we're going to implement now. So just wanted to give you a full resource here, a reference that you can use to follow along with if you want to explore this subject more fully. Okay, well, that's it for the PowerPoint. Let's get back into the actual code. So what I have here, something I really need to talk about before we get too far ahead. You need to have, we're going to assume right now that we're going to use something like Gmail or Outlook, right? You can actually, if you want to, you could use your own personal email. Don't try to use your college one. You could use your own personal email account, okay? Outlook, Gmail, whatever. But I recommend you don't, okay? Because it's almost guaranteed it's going to happen. Big warning here. Sending too many emails or email at all to a bogus account will very quickly get your account suspended. So think about all the accounts we've been seeding into our system so far, things like admin@outlook.com, right? Well, it's a bogus email address, right? Try to send email there and it'll bounce back very, very quickly. If our application starts sending email to all these different accounts, it's going to stop working very, very soon. right? And you don't want that to happen to your personal email, do you, right? So I highly recommend you take the time, go and just sign up for a new account somewhere, whether you prefer Gmail or Outlook. I have found that Gmail is getting fussier and fussier, right? So you might find that it's actually a little bit easier to use an Outlook account for this, but it's, let me know. Try both if you want to, and let me know which you found was easier. But in my experience, last time I went to set one up, Outlook was a little bit more user-friendly in terms of the number of hoops you didn't have to jump through. But you will, it's not just a matter of creating the account. You're going to have to verify it, right? So you'll have to either give another email address or a phone number or something to do some verification, right? To make sure you're a real person, that you have a identity out there, okay? Even if it's going to be a my test account at gmail.com or whatever, right? Okay. So get that set up. You'll have to go through the whole process. By the way, you have to definitely verify it and then test actually sending an email from the account. So once you get that far, then you're free to actually use it, right? And then you can go ahead and start building your own test of this. Okay. All right, so what we're going to mention here is our focus is on sending email, right? As I mentioned, you can also configure a POP server, but it's beyond what we're going to even worry about in this course. We aren't worried about having the application receiving email messages, just sending them out, okay? That's usually where the need is in an application like this, whether we're going to be sending warnings, notifications to users, or the whole forgot password thing, or it could be business-related email. Maybe our users are signing up for monthly updates on something, or who knows, right? Okay, so in terms of getting an email service in place, one of the things in our favor that we want to tap into is the fact that the identity system already defines an interface for an email service. Bada bing, half our work done, right? So all we have to do is implement the interface, okay, and then use it to do all of our forgot password and everything else, okay? Then we'll see that we can take our email service and then also use it down here in the next step for production email as well. Okay, so it mentions 3 main steps involved, right? You have to have access to an email service. Well, we just talked about that. So I suggest creating a new account at your preferred service provider, right? Add classes to our app, okay, for the email service. So that's usually just whatever NuGet package you want. I'm going to use the one we were talking about earlier, right? Then we have to configure email. We have to implement the iEmail sender that comes from the identity UI services, and then get everything set up in Program CS so that this will be something we can then inject, right, with dependency injection, right into our controllers or wherever else we need to be sending email from. Okay. All right. So, before I forget, let me mention this is an important issue. Niagara College, okay, not surprisingly, blocks outgoing email from inside the campus, right? Gee, I wonder why. They don't want our students spamming the world from the college servers here, right? No, so none of this code we're about to implement today, everything will appear like it works, but when you actually go and try and run this on campus in any of our labs, the emails will not go anywhere, okay? They'll be blocked, completely blocked, right? That's because of the security that they put in on campus. However, from home, so if that's where you're working from home, or even once you publish your app to Azure, even if you're just using a simple Outlook account or a Gmail account, it will work, okay? It will work just fine. It's just you can't do it on campus. Just want to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, ready for the demo. All right, so let's get into our code here. So I just mentioned a lot of the same things we just talked about. Preparation, okay, make a new free email account, okay? 3 main steps, yeah, those are the same ones we talked about and so on. So I'm going to jump down here to where we do our install package, okay? Well, I might as well just minimize this, and here we have our Visual Studio. All right, so install package, mail kit. I'll just get my package manager console up here. So this is how, this is a version of the Visual Studio project as we left it off last week. Install package mail kit, and there we go. So there we go. So now we have it in place. By the way, don't forget, you can always just come up here. You can see everything that's installed right? So there's our EP Plus, there's our MailKit version 4.3.0, and so on, right? Okay, good. All right, so we have that in place. Now, there's already, okay, the email service defined, but we have to set up some work. We have to have a configuration. Now, configuration is not something totally new. We've done it before. Way down here in App Settings, right? Here's where we set up configuration settings for our database, our connection string, right? And remember how that worked over here in our program CS, okay? We went to configuration, get connection string, right? From the configuration, and that gave us our connection string, which we use then for our DB contexts and so on and so forth, okay? So we're going to do something similar to that. We're going to get our configuration from app settings for the email service itself. So in preparation for that, we need to add a few classes, right? So I'm going to put these in view models because they aren't entity models that store in the database. So I'll put them in view models. Right click, we'll add, well, first one is technically an interface, right? So I'll choose interface just to be clear. And it's going to be my email configuration. And this is code from that tutorial that I linked, okay? So it's going to find that we need the following 5 things for an email configuration. We have to know the SMTP server. Okay, that's the actual address of the server. We need the port, okay? We need to configure a from name. When you send email, you always have to say who it's from. So, you know, in an application like this, that will typically be maybe the name of the application, something like that, right? And then the final 2 things, the username and password of the account, okay, set up on this particular SMTP server that you're going to be sending from, right? Okay, so that's just the interface. So I could put them together. Sometimes a lot of people do, but I'm trying to, you know, be as clear as possible. So in a separate class file, here's the actual email configuration. And all it is we're just creating an actual object, a class that we can then instantiate that implements that iEmail configuration. Okay. All right, so that's done. So we're ready to get our configuration settings in place, okay? So next step, we're actually going to define our email service. Now remember, this is where we're taking advantage of the iEmail service that's already part of the identity system, okay? So where are we going to put this email service class? Well, in my way of thinking, and this isn't necessarily the only place you could put it, but it's kind of like a utility as far as I'm concerned. It's a little utility, a tool in my toolkit that I'm going to pull out whenever I need to send email. I'm going to go to utilities and add it in here. I'm going to add a class, okay, for my email service. Now, in my copy-paste file, notice I say note 2 things, right? You got to be careful because there are 2 objects in here, well, 2 classes, SMTP client and iEmail sender. There could be confusion about which ones we're talking about in the system. And we have to make sure that we're using the correct ones, right? Now, the one I always find always works properly, and that's the iEmail sender, right? So I'll just hover over and you can see, just to confirm, yes, this is the one from Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, right? Identity UI Services, good. It already assumed the correct one. It's not a different one out there that there could be confusion. But down here, look at it, it's even underlined, which is good. Okay, it didn't make an assumption because half the times it makes the wrong assumption. So we have 2 choices here. I can say using system.net.mail. No, definitely, we had that discussion. We don't want to use that one, right? That's the old one, okay, that although it's here because, hey, you know, we could be using .NET Framework, right? No, we want to use MailKit. So make sure you add that using so the SMTP client is coming from the right library. Okay, so we're good. So we've made sure that both iEmail sender is from Identity and SMTP client is getting it from MailKit, and we should be good. So what is actually happening in here? Well, remember, this was predefined as part of the identity system. So we're just saying, I'll implement it this way, okay? I'm going to need my iEmail configuration. Yeah, of course I will, right? That's the one I created just a few minutes ago. And I'm just going to use a logger that's built into the system already. We've never really talked about it. It's just been there, okay? So in the constructor, the most important thing as far as I'm concerned is my email configuration, right? So we'll get that. Now we have to actually add that so it's available in dependency injection, but we will get there, I promise. Okay, so this simply asynchronously builds and sends a message to a single recipient. So yeah, let me kind of stop there for a second. It is a pretty limited implementation of an email system, right? Sends a simple message to a single recipient. So that's why later on we're going to make our own email sender, right? So that we can do things like a blanket email to go to a whole bunch of people at once and so on. That's not capable, that's not set up for us to do with this simple implementation here, right? So we have an email, we have a subject, and a message using HTML, and that's all there is to it. So it follows the same kind of code that we had looked at even in the PowerPoint, right? We make a new my message, got a mailbox address set up for the to, one for the from, right? And of course here we're going to our email configuration, okay? Getting that username and so on, that comes right from that class that we set up a few minutes ago, right? So we're going to define that in our app settings, where it'll get that value from, okay, through the configuration system. Subject, body, bada bing, bada boom, all the steps necessary to get the connection open, authenticate, right, using our username and password, sending it and disconnecting, okay, just logging in error if there is one. Okay, basic implementation of the one in the identity system. We're good to go. Now, we got to finish the configuration part of it though, right? So for that, we have to work in program. Remember, here's where we talked about accessing configuration and so on. But I'm going to jump ahead over to our app settings JSON. I'm going to put something in here first, okay? So we're going to add a whole section in here named email configuration. I could call it Fred's Eats Donuts on Friday instead of email configuration, as long as I refer to it that way, right? Just kind of pointing out that it doesn't have any magic to the words. It's just what I'm calling it. Okay, so the 5 things we need to know: the server, the port, from, name, username, and password, right? So depending on what you've done, if you're using Gmail or whatever, you have to find out what the server is. I happen to know the one for Outlook right here. So I'm just going to take that out, smtp-mail.outlook.com. That is the actual server that Outlook uses. Port is 587. Okay. From name. Okay, as I said, it's usually the application name, although I could put David sends you a message, but I'll call it medical office. I don't know. Application. Oh, I always get that wrong. Okay, now the only thing left is the username and password, right? Well, you know what? I do have an account that I set up earlier. I tested it. I had to re-verify it because I haven't used it in a while, okay? And I can tell you right now, it's called NC Demo Student at Outlook. So I've gone to the trouble of getting that set up. So I should be able to use it here, right? I just have to put the password in. Now, forgive me for being private about this, but you know, I kind of want to be able to rely on using this in my demonstrations. So I'm just pulling this off the screen for a moment while I get the password in place. Okay. Sorry, just reading the comments. All right. Yeah, don't want to be accused of spamming. All right, so now I've got my configuration saved in there. Let's come back to program, right? So I don't know where, it doesn't matter too much where I put it, I don't think, but I'm going to come down here. Remember, here's where we added this, the HTTP accessor business. Well, we're going to do something along that line. So first of all, I need to be able to go and get the configuration settings where I just put them in my app settings JSON file, right? So I'll, you know, this is my iEmail configuration. Okay, so I go to my configuration, get section, email configuration, right? And that gets me my object here, my email configuration itself. So that's how I get that. And then for the identity system, I'm just going to make it available so I can inject it where it's expected, okay? Now this is already all set up throughout the actual identity system itself, so I just had to add it here, right? So it gives the ability to send my email sender, okay? That's the class that I created a few minutes ago, my email sender implementing the iEmail sender, and now the identity system has it available to use. And that's basically it, right? So now I'm going to mention, okay, because of the changes we did at the very beginning of the class today, where we put back the requirement to have confirmed email addresses, and I've seeded everybody that is seeded in my initializer class for application DB context already has that confirmed, that it is confirmed and so on. I'm ready to use this, okay? But down the road, we are going to be doing quite a bit of work where we actually customize the pages within the identity system. I mentioned it before, that if you come in here and look, you don't see anything, right? So how do we get the pages when it goes and they aren't here? Well, they're all compiled and stored in a Razor class library, and it just unzips them, so to speak, on the fly when we need them, right? We can, however, scaffold them all so that we can modify them. Let me just show you how that works. If I right-click here and just go down to Add, it's New Scaffolded Item. So again, Add New Scaffolded Item. When I select that, there's all different kinds of things. We've seen a lot of these before. Hey, this is how we get our MVC controllers with views using Entity Framework and so on. But if I come over here to Identity and select that, it'll come up with a dialog box in here in a moment, getting ready to scaffold all the pages that have been hidden from view, right? Now, this is important because if we want to make any changes, right, to the text that appears on the page or even to the logic of how they're working, right, then we actually have to scaffold them into our system, and then we can modify them to our heart's content. So I could just check this off, override all files, but look at how many there are, right? Bit of a warning. When you do this, if you do it, right, it will actually increase the size of your folder, right, quite a bit where your project is stored, because you're adding quite a few files into the overall system here, right? So instead of overriding all of them, maybe think, well, you know what, I just want to change the wording when it comes up to that forgot password or whatever, right? Well, then just, select the one or two that you actually need, and you can scaffold them, right? It's up to you. By the way, you do have to select the DB context. Well, what is the DB context for identity? Yeah, it's the only one in the list, application DB context, right? Then check off as many as you want, and then it'll actually scaffold them in. Now, I'm not going to do any right now, but I wanted to share with you where you can go and get them from. So it will come up again because we are going to, down the road, definitely be making some customizations to some of these pages, but they should just work for us for now. By the way, they wouldn't work if we hadn't made that change on that that fallback, right, where we force you to be logged in everywhere. Yeah, it doesn't work very well with identity. But we should be good. Let's just give it a try. So I'm going to run the application. I've got it configured with my special account, right? By the way, make sure you deleted the database, right? Because we need to re-scaffold, right? Or not scaffold, reseed all those users because we changed it, right? So I'll just test, make sure that I can log in here. I'll just try to log in as admin. Okay, so we're good. So everything's working fine. I can get everywhere that I want and so on and so forth. Okay. All right, these are the 3 users that we scaffolded. They're available and everything's working because we set that email confirmed equal to true as we actually created these identity users, right? Okay, so I'm going to come along and I'm going to register. I'm going to register with my college email. Password, don't tell anybody, it's PA55W@RD. What was it again? PA55W@RD. Did I get it? Oh, I must have done it the same both times. Okay, there we go. Look at this. This is new. Check your email to confirm your account. Okay, all right. Hang on one sec. Okay, so I just moved my Outlook off the screen so then I can come here. Look at that. I'll bring it up so we can see it over here. Here's the email that came in from the application. Yay! Confirm your email. And look at it, it's from medical office application. Okay. Now, yeah, it says the name of the account, NC Demo student, but that's okay. Right? I know it's from the medical office application. Please confirm your account by clicking here. So when I click this is something that wouldn't work when I scaffold this page. And then if I had that fallback option on, because it sends a GET request. If you look at the link that's when I hover over there, it goes to identity/account/confirm email. It's a GET request passing my user ID and then a code that was generated, right? So of course, as soon as it hit there, it would say, oh, there's no allow anonymous. And we have a fallback policy here that you can't come to any page without being logged in. So this would fail, right? So yeah, that's one reason that policy is not our friend, right? But if I click this right now, see the dots are running. So it's sending the request, and here we go. Thank you for confirming your email. There we go. And now I should be able to log in with my new account. And there we are. Look at that. Isn't that great? Okay. See, hello, Dave Stovall, right? I can come here. I can see patients. I can see doctors. But of course, okay, access is denied because why? Well, let me just log out for a second. Come back in as admin once more. Coming down here to our user roles. Okay, there's this new user that just registered, but of course they're not in any role, right? I could add them to a role, of course, but I'm not going to take, well, maybe I will. I'll just show you that. Okay, so now I'm a supervisor. Once more, I'll log in under my D. Stovall account. So that should let me do things like come to details. Yeah, so I see I was told before I wasn't allowed. So yeah, everything is working. And I can log in, I can log out. Oh, let's try one more thing. Let's do, what was my password? I don't remember. Forgot your password. So I put in my email, reset password. There we go. Please check your email, right? It hasn't come yet. Oh, there it is, just popped up. There's the email. Okay, reset password by clicking here. And there we go. I can reset the password. Now, it will allow me to use the same password again. If you want to actually be really mean to people and say you can't reuse old passwords, well, system's not set up for that yet, but of course it's fully open. We can customize it, right? You'll have to maintain a history of passwords. That's not built in just yet, but it can be easily done. And then you could implement your own password verification class, and then add the ability to check the history and make sure it's not one they've used before. So I reset, okay? I can click here, log in again, and since I did use the same one, I can just log in. All right, so we're good, okay? We're all in, I'm a supervisor, away we go. Any questions about that? All right. Well, I'll stop and start the recording just to break up the lesson.